She rolled her eyes. So what if I hung out with him? You were working late anyway. After I noticed his hoodie in her closet, I said, right, I work late to build a life, not watch you ruin it. She had nothing to say when I transferred the apartment lease into her name and walked out with my last box. I'm a builder. It's what I do. I'm not talking about construction, though I respect the trade. I mean, I build things from nothing. I built a career by starting in the mailroom and working my way up to a senior analyst position. I built my savings by living on rice and beans for 5 years until I had a down payment for a future. I operate on a simple principle. You don't get the life you want by wishing for it. You get it by building it, brick by painful brick. My girlfriend Megan was supposed to be my partner in this. I thought we were building the same life. I now see that she was just living in the house I was building, complaining about the noise of the construction. For 3 years, the dynamic worked, or so I thought. I worked long hours, often getting home late. It was a sacrifice, but a necessary one. Every extra hour I put in was another brick in the foundation of the future I had promised her. A house of our own. Financial security. The freedom to travel. She had a part-time job in a boutique that covered her personal spending, but I handled the major expenses. The rent on our nice downtown apartment, the utilities, the car payments, the groceries. I saw it as my role, my investment in our shared future. She saw it, I now realize, as her birthright. The disconnect became obvious in the small things. While I was working late on a critical project, she would be out for spontaneous drinks with her friends. When I was exhausted on a Saturday, she would be annoyed that I didn't have the energy to go to a boozy brunch. My sacrifice wasn't seen as a contribution to us, it was seen as an inconvenience to her. The person she was most inconvenienced by my work for was Alex. Alex was her work husband, a term she used with a smug little laugh. He was a guy from a nearby store who she took her lunch breaks with. Those lunch breaks started getting longer. Then they turned into after-work drinks. Then they turned into him just dropping by while I was working late. I didn't like it, but I'm not the kind of guy to lay down rules. I believe in letting people's actions speak for themselves. I just observed and collected the data. The final conclusive piece of data presented itself last Wednesday. I was putting away laundry when I noticed a piece of clothing in her side of the closet that wasn't hers. It was a dark gray men's hoodie, a specific brand that I knew she'd never buy for me. It was crumpled in the back, behind her dresses, as if hidden in a hurry. I pulled it out, it smelled faintly of his cologne, the same one I had smelled on her clothes after her late nights out. I didn't feel rage. I felt something much colder and heavier, the weight of a failed investment. I had poured years of my life, my energy, and my money into a project that was structurally unsound from the beginning. The foundation was rotten, it was time to demolish it before it collapsed on top of me. I waited for her to get home. She came in around 8, flushed and happy from a long day of inventory. I was sitting on the couch. I held up the hoodie. This was in the closet, I said, my voice completely neutral. She froze. The happy glow vanished. She looked at the hoodie, and for a moment, I saw a genuine panic. But as always, she quickly defaulted to her primary defense, aggressive dismissal. She rolled her eyes, a gesture of pure, condescending contempt. "Oh my God, are you serious?" she said, snatching the hoodie from me. "It's Alex's. He was cold the other night when he walked me home, so I let him borrow my jacket and he gave me this. So what if I hung out with him? You were working late anyway." That was it. That was the moment. The casual, entitled justification. My hard work wasn't a sacrifice for our future, it was her alibi. My long hours weren't building a life for us, they were creating a convenient opportunity for her. I looked at her, at the defiant tilt of her chin, at the complete lack of remorse in her eyes. The builder in me took over. When a project is a total loss, you don't try to patch it up. You cut your losses, tear it down, and salvage what you can. "You're right," I said, my voice quiet and steady. "I do work late." I stood up and faced her. "I work late to build a life, not to stand around and watch you ruin it." I walked past her and went straight to my office. She started yelling after me, something about me being controlling and insecure. I didn't hear her. I was already shutting the door, my mind clear and focused. The demolition had begun. She thought we were having a fight. She had no idea I was already drawing up the blueprints for my new life. Update 1. The 48 hours after the confrontation were a period of intense focused activity. Megan, assuming we were in for a few days of silent treatment, followed by her eventual grudging forgiveness, went about her life. She went to work, she went out with her friends, she was giving me space to get over it. She had no idea I was using that space to orchestrate a complete and total strategic withdrawal from her life. My plan wasn't emotional, it was financial and logistical. The biggest chain tying me to her was our apartment. We lived in a great 2-bedroom place in a desirable part of the city. The lease was of course solely in my name. I had the credit score and the income to secure it. She was listed as an occupant, nothing more. This was my primary leverage. My first call on Thursday morning was to the property management company. I spoke with the building manager, a no-nonsense woman named Brenda with whom I had a good professional relationship. I had always paid my rent on time and had never caused any trouble. That professional courtesy was about to pay dividends. I explained the situation in calm, corporate terms. "Brenda," I said, "my domestic partner and I are separating. I will be vacating the apartment. However, she wishes to remain. I need to know the procedure for a lease transfer, to transfer the full legal and financial responsibility of the lease from my name to hers." Brenda was sympathetic but firm. "Well, that's a tricky situation, Kevin. She would have to reapply on her own and frankly, based on the income information she provided as an occupant, she wouldn't qualify." This was the obstacle I had anticipated. "I understand that," I said, "but I have a proposal. I am willing to prepay the next 2 months' rent in full, right now. That gives her a 60-day cushion to find a roommate or secure her finances. All I want is to have my name legally removed from the lease and all future liability effective immediately upon her signing the transfer addendum." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her typing. The offer of 2 months' rent, guaranteed, was a powerful incentive. It removed all risk for the management company. "You're serious?" she asked. "You'd pay for 2 months, you're not even living there, just to get your name off the lease." "I am 100% serious," I said. "Think of it as a severance package. I just need you to draw up the lease transfer addendum. I will handle getting her signature." Brenda agreed. She said she would have the legal document ready for me to pick up the next day. The trap was now being built. While I waited for the paperwork, I began the process of disentangling my life from hers. I went through our bank statements and calculated every shared expense for the past year. I created a spreadsheet, not of her schedule, but of our financial life. It showed in stark, undeniable black and white that I was covering over 85% of our total living expenses. This document wasn't for her. It was for me. It was a reminder of the hole I was about to climb out of. Then, I started packing. But I didn't pack her things. I packed mine. I was methodical. I bought high-quality boxes and packing tape. I started with my office, boxing up my books, my files, my computer equipment. Then I moved to my clothes, my personal items. I worked quietly while she was at her part-time job. I stacked the boxes neatly in the spare bedroom, out of sight. I was becoming a ghost in my own home. On Friday afternoon, I picked up the lease transfer addendum from Brenda. It was a simple, 1-page document. It stated that as of the date of signing, Kevin Miller was released from all financial and legal obligations related to Apartment 4B, and that Megan Lane assumed full and sole responsibility for the remainder of the lease term. The plan was to present this to her not as a breakup document, but as a standard, boring piece of administrative paperwork. My chance came that evening. Megan, still in her giving me space mode, was getting ready to go out with her friends. I walked into the living room, holding the document and a pen. I put on a look of weary resignation. "Hey," I said. "Look, I know things are tense right now, but the leasing office sent over the annual lease renewal information. They need it back by Monday. Can you just sign this so I can drop it off?" She looked at the paper with suspicion. "A renewal? Already?" "It's not the full renewal," I lied smoothly. "It's just the initial intent form. Standard procedure. You just need to sign at the bottom, as the other listed occupant." She was distracted, thinking about her night out. She didn't want to deal with boring apartment paperwork. She just wanted me to go away, so she could finish getting ready. She took the pen, glanced briefly at the dense legal text without actually reading it, and scribbled her signature on the line at the bottom. She handed it back to me. "There," she said. "Happy now?" Ecstatic, I replied quietly, my face betraying nothing. I took the signed document, walked back to my office, and immediately scanned it and emailed it to Brenda at the property management office. The trap had been sprung. She had just willingly and legally taken possession of her own prison. Update 2. The final day was Saturday. I had arranged for a small moving truck to arrive at noon. Megan had gone out for brunch with her friends, no doubt to complain about her moody boyfriend. The timing was perfect. I spent the morning moving my packed boxes from the spare room into the living room. It was a tangible representation of my life, neatly contained and ready for extraction. I took down my photos, my posters, my few pieces of art. The apartment began to feel less like a home and more like a hotel room I was checking out of. The movers were quick and professional. They had all my belongings loaded into the truck in under an hour. I did a final sweep of the apartment. Everything that was left belonged to her. The furniture we had picked out together, the kitchen supplies, the television, the mountain of her clothes and shoes. I was leaving it all behind. It was a small price to pay for my freedom. As the movers were closing up the truck, Megan's car pulled into the parking lot. She got out, laughing on the phone with someone. She saw the moving truck and her laughter died. She saw me standing by the truck and her face clouded over with confusion and anger. She ended her call and stormed over to me. "What is this?" she demanded. "What are you doing?" "I'm moving out," I said simply. "You're moving out," she repeated, disbelief warring with fury. "Just like that? You're just going to leave? Over a stupid hoodie?" "It was never about the hoodie, Megan," I said, my voice calm. "The hoodie was just the final piece of data. It was the confirmation of a pattern of disrespect. It was proof that while I was working to build us a future, you were entertaining another man in the present." "I told you he's just a friend," she insisted, her voice rising. "You are blowing this completely out of proportion." "Am I?" I asked. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a copy of the signed lease transfer addendum. I handed it to her. "I don't think so. I think I'm reacting in a perfectly proportional way." She unfolded the paper, she read the first line, her eyes widened. She read it again, her lips moving silently. She looked from the paper to me, her face a mask of pure, uncomprehending horror. "What is this?" she whispered. "Lease transfer, sole responsibility. What does this mean?" "It means exactly what it says," I explained, my voice devoid of any emotion. "You signed this yesterday. You are now the sole legal and financial responsible party for this apartment. The rent, the utilities, all of it. It's all yours now. Congratulations." She shook her head, frantically. "No, I didn't agree to this. You tricked me. I presented you with a legal document and you signed it," I countered. "Just like you presented me with a relationship and I signed on, assuming you were acting in good faith. It seems we both have a problem with reading the fine print." I gestured to the apartment building. "This life, this nice apartment you love so much. It all has a cost. I've been paying it. Now, it's your turn." I walked over to the moving truck. I had left one to last box to load myself. It contained my most important personal documents and a few sentimental items. I picked it up. "Right," I said, looking back at her one last time. "I work late to build a life, not watch you ruin it." She had nothing to say. She just stood there, clutching the piece of paper that had just become her anchor, her face a mixture of devastation and disbelief. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't rolling her eyes. She was silent. I turned my back on her, placed my last box in the truck and closed the door. I got in the cab and drove away, not looking back once. The demolition was complete. Final update. It's been 6 months. The dust has settled and the new life I started building that day is solid, quiet and entirely my own. The aftermath of my departure was, from what I've pieced together, a spectacular financial and personal collapse for Megan. The first domino to fall was the rent. The 2 months I had prepaid gave her a buffer, but she lived under the delusion that she could somehow get out of the lease, that she could call Brenda at the management office and cry her way out of a legally binding contract she had signed. Brenda, I'm told, was having none of it. She informed Megan that the lease was ironclad and that the full rent would be due on the first month. Megan, whose part-time job at a boutique barely covered her car payment and her brunch budget, could not afford the rent. Not even close. She tried desperately to find a roommate, but her timeline was too short and her own chaotic nature likely didn't make her an appealing person to live with. She tried to get Alex, her work husband, to move in with her. That conversation, according to a mutual friend who got the story from Alex himself, was a disaster. He had enjoyed their flirtation, their secret meetups. He had not signed up to pay the rent for a 2-bedroom apartment and be her new provider. He wanted the fun without the responsibility. When she came to him with her financial crisis, he bailed immediately, blocking her number and vanishing from her life. The end result was inevitable. After my 2 prepaid months were up, she missed her first rent payment. The management company started the eviction process immediately. A formal eviction on her record has, I'm sure, made it incredibly difficult for her to rent another decent place. She was forced to move back in with her parents. The furniture and all the other things I had left behind had to be sold for pennies on the dollar or put into expensive storage, which her parents had to pay for. She lost the apartment, she lost her side piece, and she lost the comfortable, subsidized lifestyle she had taken for granted. She was left with nothing but the consequences of her own choices. As for me, I moved into a smaller, more affordable 1-bedroom apartment. It's all I need. With the money I'm saving, I've accelerated my plan to buy a house. My own house. The financial freedom of not supporting another adult who refuses to contribute is staggering. My revenge wasn't about the hoodie. It wasn't even about the affair. It was a response to her fundamental disrespect for my work, my sacrifice, and our supposed shared goals. She saw my long hours as her opportunity. I made those long hours the very thing that empowered me to walk away clean. I didn't scream or fight. I didn't destroy her property. I simply transferred responsibility. I took the life she so casually enjoyed, and I handed her the bill. She rolled her eyes at my concerns, so I built a new life where her opinion is irrelevant. She had nothing to say in the end, because there is no argument against a well-executed plan. There is no comeback to a consequence you signed for yourself.